Well, this is a good break since we're talking about Forbes to talk about money from a Black Wall Street perspective because I've got my Black Wall Street journalist. She's back, a former investment banker who left corporate America to found Kids Who Bank. It's an organization that teaches financial literacy to children in 137 schools nationwide. Say hello to the Black Wall Street journalist, Jatali B. Hey, lady.
Cheers, Rock here. How are you?
Jatali, I actually received an email pertaining to you from
Oh,
a Martin Reed. He emailed realblacknewsonline at gmail.com and he says, "Dude, I'm so loving your podcast." I'm like, I'm not a dude, but I understand what he's saying. And he says, I'm all about the economic side of our quote unquote freedom. I'm invested in Tulsa Real Estate Fund, the Wakanda Group, which you have to get your financial person to speak on. I guess you're that financial person. I'm pretty heavily invested in crypto, but could tell that your financial person knows the basics of it, but there's so much more to it.
so yes, you're fully correct, Martin. This is just the base of it. I wanted to really give a crash course on cryptos just because this is something that is new to a lot of people, and I didn't want to overwhelm anyone who was listening for the first time learning about cryptos. But this is definitely something that was just surface level. In my personal opinion, I knew I touched upon the surface level, and I say surface level because when we go deeper, we can discuss things like Assemblyman Clyde Vannell, who is currently working with the government to get cryptocurrencies federally regulated. In fact, I think I made a mistake the last podcast and I made a comment. I said it wasn't federally legal. And I meant to say not federally regulated, which is a difference because it's not that it's not
Cryptocurrency isn't
illegal,
federally.
cryptocurrency
Mm,
regulated. So there is a difference. It's not that it's not legal. It is legal, technically speaking, but it's kind of a gray area and it's not federally regulated. And right now, there are people in the government who are working towards getting that done. And there's even talks of it potentially having its own kind of like a version of a stock market, so it can be publicly traded. So there's so many different levels to this cryptocurrency game that I just wanted to touch upon it lightly. But as we go on, we will definitely come back to cryptocurrencies, and I definitely look forward to learning more about Wakanda that he mentioned, and learning more about cryptos even from professionals who have been in the crypto game from the beginning. So
nice.
we'll come back to that.
So if you're looking to hear more about cryptocurrencies, for those who were just tuned in, you can go back to episode 2. That was our episode with Tamika Mallory, Women's March co-chair, and also Craig Mums Grant, actor from Black Klansman and Hover. You can check out the Black Wall Street report in that episode if you want to learn more. But moving forward, I know Miss Jatali will discuss Tulsa Real Estate Fund and a lot of other things. But today, what have you got for us?
Today, I'm discussing the stock market crashing.
That's scary. That so now
I
because I
know.
really, and this was sort of my idea and I kind of regretted it, but I want you to move forward because I there's a fear. I have a fear. We know can be a fear in the community of us losing our money because of our history of banks taking our money.
And that's
So
why diversification is key. Sorry to
okay,
cut
so
you off.
let's talk about this crash because it makes me scared.
Don't be scared. Diversify. There's a solution. It's a simple solution. It's a quick solution.
So wait,
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
explain this crash. Explain what you think because this is not fact. This is something you're saying people think. So where does this come from?
I mean, it comes from me personally as a person who works in the finance world. Every the last crash was the Great Depression in 19 October 1929. So for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been in the game, within I would say since people who have been in the game for 10 to 20 years have been saying we're due for a crash because the last big crash, the black market crash, was October 1929. right? And that was for 12 years, a depression that lasted for a long time. Not saying that the stock market was the only reason for the Great Depression, but it was a major catalyst, right? So fast forward to now, even as recent as April of this year, 2018, Time Magazine, which is a major publication a lot of people vouch for, released an article titled "When the Stock Market Will Crash,"
Mm.
right? Literally, word for word, that was the title of the magazine article. In fact, you could Google it and you'll find it, it'll pull right up. And a lot of people started to freak out. You're just so calm about it. Try Magazine and these people are all saying it's going to crash. We're due for a crash. And I was like, because I've been told for the last 10 to 20 years, from I was a young kid before I was officially in the stock market game, to be diversified because and have diversified portfolios because the market is due for a crash. And, these professionals say this because even up until about 9 years ago, when there was like a light crash in the stock markets, it's something that happens. The market fluctuates. We are looking at the economy. We're seeing that money inflation, of the dollar. We're seeing China is, creating a gold-backed yuan. All of these major things that are happening around the world that are on Forbes magazine, Wall Street Journal, they're all talking about these things. And China is moving to team up with the European market to return to a gold backing standard, which would mean that the dollar would no longer be the main. That is all, those are all things that if any of those happen, will crash this market for a very long time, which is why I say it's important to diversify and have your money in more than one thing.
Okay.
For instance, I'm a big fan of real estate. So if you're going to keep your dollars in America and the United States, and you're going to pull them out of the stock market. I'm not saying to pull all of your money from the stock market, but I am saying whatever you're pulling out, you should maybe put some in real estate. And people think, oh, you need 100 to 200,000 to $1 million to invest in real estate. I've known people who have successfully, including one of my nephews, successfully invested in real estate with as little as $10,000 to $15,000. And the way you do that, there are websites like Acris. So, we like to give websites that people can go to. So case in point, Acris, ACRIS, is a section of the NYC.gov website where they give people all the information on the property deeds, the mortgage. It lets you know who owes money. It lets you know if a property is unstable, like the foundation is unstable, so nobody wants to purchase it because of that and the amount of work that would go into it. It gives you homes that have squatters in them. It gives you all of this information so that now you can, by zone, start to do your research and maybe you can start to attack, like, let's say, pre-foreclosures. So it's just an idea, something that $10,000 could potentially make you $100,000 profit.
But we have there are listeners all over the world listening to this show. Ghana has become a
Hmm.
favorite. California, I've been looking
Love
at the
it.
stats. It's a beautiful thing. It's a blessing. All up and down the East Coast and also Texas and other countries. So for those that might listening and they're like, "Okay, but I'm not in New York, where can they get this information?"
So if you're outside of New York, one of the things that you could really do is Google property deed. So once you Google the property deed and mortgage, the website that you find that information in California will be able to also tell you, or any other state will also have the other information as well that is privy to everyone. So, and then some places you actually have to go down to like the town hall and physically look for that information. If you put in the work, the information is there. It's just sometimes it's easier or harder depending where you are. So when you look outside of the country, real estate, I might not be able to give you a website, for instance, but I know, for instance, I'm looking at properties in South Africa. So I worked it out with a real estate agent out there who's expert in short sales and pre-foreclosures, which is to me personally, I think that's usually the best aggressive market to look at, especially when you look at a place like South Africa, Cape Town, where most of the properties are purchased already and are going for $1 million.
So
So in my, hmm
so you're saying diversifying in real estate. Great. That's one way to
that's one
diversify.
option.
But what what
Another
what
way,
what are if you could just quickly list off some other options of ways to prepare for a stock market crash and ways to diversify really quick.
So another way I would say to diversify that I think is really important is gold and silver. And every time a market crashes, when you look back at it, gold is usually what people revert back to. So my other thing is to tell people, guess what? Silver right now is cheap. So buy silver. If you can't afford, let's say you only have $100 to $200 to invest with, pick up some silver. Silver is like $14 to $17.
Actual,
You pick,
literally, some silver. Like,
well, not the jewelry in particular. I'm more talking about the ounces, like the actual coins or the actual bullions.
so buy it and have that in your home. You're like, get a safe and put it in a safe.
You can put it in a safe. You can have a safe house. You can have a place that you put it. I personally don't suggest putting it into the bank itself because, if something happens to the government, like what happened in Greece, then you will see the bank seize everything and you'll be screwed. So I say personally find a safe haven or a place that you feel comfortable leaving it. And the same for gold. People know that gold is sold by the ounce 12.47, but for a bar it's about 400 ounces equals a bar if I'm not mistaken, which would make it about $500,000. So if you don't have that, but you have, let's say, 1,200 to invest in, then get an ounce of gold or get whatever you can of gold. That's another thing that when the market hits and crashes, usually comes into play. And I take that because Venezuela, for instance, people right now in Venezuela, they're going through hyperinflation with the money. There's major issues. Their money basically is worth nothing right now. And what they're utilizing, the ones who are able to actually feed their families, were families that had gold and silver. Those are the two main ways I would say to invest. Well, I mean, you and I personally discussed this, Rakia, but I don't think we've done a podcast yet.
Okay.
So that's why definitely I think it was important to like touch upon it. Um, Other as per other ways, then the next thing comes the trend of the entrepreneur, creating a business or something that will make you in a position that you are definitely going to make money no matter what. So people who have a trade, like let's say if you are able to make clothing, and then that some people are going to still want to have certain things done. I'm not going to say necessarily clothing if the market crashes, but as an entrepreneur, start to think outside of the box and think, what kind of business can you create that will do well even if the market crashes? So when you look at the Great Depression, people started to look at moonshining, for instance, right? Like the people really started purchasing liquor a lot. The
Because people were
who were
depressed. They were
moonshiners and
like,
knew how to make
oh, I
liquor.
lost my money.
People
I
were
need a
depressed. They wanted
drink.
drinks.
I need a drink. I don't even need a drink when I've lost my money. So the alcohol will always do well.
Right. So that's and so I hate to, people be like, oh my God, Jatali, are you telling people to go like invest in liquor in case the market crashes to create more drunks? But like realistically speaking, that is just one more option. Another option when you look at it would be as an entrepreneur, you look at the cannabis industry that we were just discussing. That's something else that's different and it's in many multiple markets.
And what else?
One thing I will note is that when the market crashed last time in 1929, the biggest, when the Great Depression happened, it was a month after England's market crashed. A lot of people seem to forget that. So that's another thing. When you pay attention to what's happening in England's market, it kind of starts to give you a ticker as to what's going to happen in America's market. So, so people who were investing here in the States, I know a few investors too, like, oh, well, I have money in the European market, so I should be fine. And I don't think that's enough. So if you're going to diversify, also look into other markets besides Europe. Look at having money in Africa. Look at having money in Australia. Make sure you have some investments in other parts of the world as well, because then that also creates another cushion for you, where the next thing you have to worry about is just getting to that place or getting a hold of that currency, right? So people tend to, because I live in America, all my money is here, invested in places here. Not necessarily the best thing.
This is good stuff.
Or
Good stuff. Jatali B with the Black Wall Street Report. Jatali, can you tell them where they can get in contact with you?
you can check me out at info@kidswhobank.com. So that's kidswhobank.com. Or you can go to my website. So www.kidswhobank.com.